think one thing that we're seeing across the world is that Israel's enemies have become avowed enemies of the United States. And the statement has been made by Shimon Peres and others that we are Israel and Israel is us. And that's how we are being viewed. And the foe right now is a radicalized Islam across the world. And it's very clear. The goal is the absolute utter destruction of Israel. We saw the supreme leader in Iran say less than 2 months ago that Israel's a cancer and it must be cut out. Now, that isn't just the first time they've said something like that. They continually repeat their intention. And if there's anything that the history of the last 100 years has taught us, it's that when a madman speaks, you listen and you pay attention. I think we need to listen and pay attention to these lunatic rantings, because they aren't just making absurd statements or calling for genocide. Now they're saying that they actually have the capacity, potentially, of backing up those threats. That's why we're all so concerned right now. So the United States needs to recognize that if, God forbid, Iran would achieve their goal and wipe Israel off of the map, we can't survive under any delusion that we won't be next. It may be that Iran decides to take out the United States first before Israel, because they know that we would have the capacity, potentially the only nation that would have the capacity, that would have both the will and the means to defend Israel if she were under attack. Or it may be that they choose to take out Israel first, but they would know that absolutely for certain that we would have retaliation from the United States. So we don't know what their calculus is, but we can't take the chance. That's why the United States needs to understand we are inextricably entwined with Israel. We can't extricate ourselves, because in the minds of those who hate us, they've already made the decision that we're entwined, and we need to stand together.
So if you were in President Obama's shoes right now, what would you do to make sure that Iran doesn't reach that capacity of having a nuclear weapon that can put the United States and Israel at risk?
I would have to go back a few years, because I think we've seen 3.5 years of horribly wasted opportunities on the part of the president, because he sent a signal very early on in his presidency that in his presidency he was putting daylight between the United States and Israel. The first president to do so since Israel declared her sovereignty in May of 1948. Harry Truman wisely recognized Israel 11 minutes after she declared her sovereignty. That was the strongest move that the United States could make. It sent through a megaphone to the rest of the world. You take on Israel, you take on the United States. That's what Harry Truman did for the United States. Barack Obama has done just the opposite. He sent a signal of weakness on the part of the United States, particularly when he said to the Iranians, we will meet with you for negotiations without any preconditions. No other president has ever done that before with a rogue nation like Iran, where they made no concessions themselves in order to meet. In order to have diplomacy between a nation like the United States, the other nation in negotiations also needs to agree to a set of ground rules. Iran did none of that. That sent a signal to the rest of the world, again, of weakness. And again, what was the first interview that Obama did when he became president? His first interview was with Al Arabia, and he made it very clear that his presidency was going to be very different. He was all about Islamic outreach, but even more important, Islamic empowerment. His first foreign policy speech was to Cairo. President Mubarak always kept distance between himself and the Muslim Brotherhood. Not like Barack Obama. Barack Obama invited the Muslim Brotherhood to come in. And he's, in effect, empowered them by the position that he's given to the Muslim Brotherhood. This has changed the dynamic forever in the Middle East. Tunisia has now embraced Sharia law. Libya has now embraced Sharia law and elements of Al-Qaeda. Egypt is embracing elements of some Al-Qaeda and Sharia, and now they're in the process of rewriting their constitution. We're seeing this ascendancy of Sharia in the Middle East, and hostility, and all of the nations are against Israel.
And you think that's related to President Obama's
without a
stand
shadow
on
of a doubt,
Iran and
without a
Israel?
shadow of a doubt, because the president has made it very clear he's given Iran the luxury of time. That's what he should not have done. He gave them uninterrupted, unimpeded time to develop this program. And now we're at a point that is extremely critical. And the White House still can't recognize yet the position that Iran is in and the apex that they're at. And so I think it's very important that the people of the United States recognize that Iran is a very dangerous rogue actor. We know that. We saw that they already attempted an assassination attempt of the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, and just a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, just a little over 2 weeks ago, we had a fellow strap what he thought was a bomb to his body and come up to the United States Capitol. He was within blocks of the Capitol where myself and 435 members of Congress were inside voting, and the FBI stopped him. Well, what has Barack Obama done? We now know that his FBI has been meeting with what are terrorist front groups, with ISNA, Muslim Brotherhood, and CARE. And in those meetings, they have had the ability to look at FBI training manuals and demand that any training materials for the FBI, who had intercepted most recently this fellow who wanted to bomb the U.S. Capitol, they are demanding that any references to Islam and Islamic terrorism be removed from the FBI training manual. Now, why would you do that? The people who are tasked with keeping the American people safe are told to put blinders over their eyes, don't pay any attention to the motivation for why these people might be causing terror. This is extremely dangerous. You win a war by knowing who you are and what you stand for. And you win a war by knowing who your enemy is and what their objective is. I have very serious concerns that the President of the United States is helping to put blinders over the eyes of the very people tasked with keeping us safe and putting blinders over the people's eyes about who we are as a country and what we stand for as well. This is very serious.
Mm-hmm. So under what circumstances do you think that America should move forward with military action with respect to Iran? Is that something that should happen right now, given this buildup, or is that...
It isn't a matter of just military action. It isn't a matter of that at all. There were very serious sanctions that the president could have implemented almost immediately when he came into office. He did none of that. Instead, he had a lot of cotton candy, feel-good phrases that he did, and he sent these signals of weakness. I think the President of the United States could make calls and work behind the scenes and make it absolutely unequivocally clear through covert actions, through selling Israel today the bunker buster bombs that they need, the refueling tanks that they need. He could move ships into the region in the Gulf, where he could put Aegis ships, Patriot missile ships. He could make a lot of actions right now that would send the signal that you cross one more line, you're done. That hasn't been done. The president continues to have a very soft, feel-good message that's going out to a lot of these nations. And there's other nations beyond Iran where this message could be sent, and it hasn't been.
I was wondering, do you think sanctions are going to cut it?
I believe in sanctions, but I think it's also very clear that the Iranians haven't made any effort right now to be in compliance with changing their behavior. To me, that's the real indicator. Are sanctions causing a change in behavior? No one sees any indication that these sanctions are causing any change in behavior. And we need to have a far stronger response. One thing President Obama could have done, very early on, two things he could have done. He could have stopped the massive debt that we are incurring, because his own Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, said that our debt is our greatest national security threat. Why? Because we're having to continually to go like beggars with a tin cup, borrowing money from other countries and subserving ourselves to these other nations. That makes us far more vulnerable. The other thing the president could have done is make us far more energy independent so that we aren't having to go into the Middle East to secure the energy that we need. Now, what most Americans don't realize is the fact that we are the #1 energy resource-rich nation in the world. The problem has been the federal government has made it illegal for us to access our rich American energy resources. That's madness, especially in light of the threats that we have today. President Obama's policies have made us even more dependent on Middle East oil, not less. And so what he needed to do is send a signal. Yes, we're going to build the Keystone Pipeline. Yes, we're going to access more natural gas, more coal, more oil. In fact, he should have made this a cause célèbre that we're going to go full throttle, and we could have done it through the private sector. That would have sent a signal to the world that we're no longer held captive to the Middle East and to their energy policies. President Obama, in my opinion, every move he has made as president has been one of unilateral disarmament on the part of the United States. No wonder Iran feels emboldened. And that's why, in my opinion, I'm doing everything within my power and capacity to make sure that he is a one-term president, because he's been the worst president as far as Israel's safety and security is concerned, and I believe he's also been the most dangerous president as far as America's safety and security and sovereignty is concerned.